I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Susan Lyall, the costume designer for the new Netflix movie, The Trial of the Chicago Seven. Susan, the first thing I want to ask you is, were you a fan of the fashion of the late 60s prior to signing on to this movie?
Oh, yes, I was an enormous fan of the late 1960s. It's a great time in fashion history. It's sort of the moment where things really dramatically change. And depending on which societal microcosm you belong to, you could still be straight laced looking from the late 50s, and you could be on the cusp of, Woodstock. It's a real range. And one of the things that I think the movie captures really well is how many different types of people were involved in the protest. You can very clearly understand who the establishment is. They're the men in the suits. They're politicians. They're the astronauts. They're always this certain kind of boxy 60s suit with a white shirt and a skinny tie. But then there were all these other people that were sort of just inching in and making a sartorial statement. Clothes were very effective in sending a signal of who you are. If you were wearing if you were an Ivy League kid, but you threw on an army jacket with a peace button, you were sending a signal to someone, even though everything else about you was pretty straight laced.
Well, actually, that made me think of something. What's interesting is usually you have characters that are just either all or on one side of the other. You either have your people that are with the forces of power or the forces of revolution. But then you also have characters like Mark Rylance's character, who is a part of the revolution, but he is a lawyer and he has to present himself in a certain way. And I was wondering, was that to try to come up with the character with the costume schematics for a character like that, was that difficult?
Actually, because he was playing William Kunstler, there is a lot of photo research available. And the one thing in the script that Aaron had was he was described wearing a rumpled suit. And that is pretty much as much description as I could get sometimes. But uh, for him, I just tried to choose within the sort of confines of men's clothing in suits for lawyers to get he had the opposite side of the spectrum. If you have the prosecution in those stiff boxy suits that I just described, the other side were a combination of earth tones and softer fabrics. Nobody wore a navy or charcoal gray suit on that side. Both he and Ben Schenkman, who played Leonard Weinglass, always wore tweeds in browns and greens and softer earth tones. They never wore white shirts, and their ties were less likely to be in silk. These are very subtle things, but when you look at the two sides of the courtroom, there's no question which is the defense and which is the prosecution. It's very clear, just
It's
right away. So.
it's kind of like, you look at the prosecution side, they look like your stereotypical lawyers. The other side looks more like professors.
Right. And they are kind of like, yes, that's exactly right. And they also, they look connected to their, to who they are defending. They really, the defendants can connect with them, exactly like that, perhaps like a college professor. And also with William Kunstler, in all of the research, he always had stuff jammed in his pockets up here. He always had his glass case. He seemed to have, always was pulling out a handkerchief from somewhere, and he often wore a tie bar, he always had slightly. He looked sort of. I almost spilled his coffee on his tie, or just that kind of guy, like so in his head, and wearing just what you needed to wear to respect the courtroom, but he didn't need to be super tailored. I really liked that about him. And of course Mark Rylance was really embraced that, and as they all did, by the way. But he was very, very good at it, and really he had in circulation, I don't know, 4 or 5 suits. And we really chose each one where to present it, what, where this is a very long, this is my opening scene, this is my closing scene, and there was a progression for him, that he gets, there's more and more stuff in his pockets. He starts to wear buttons with, that have a political comment, and he is less, and he's unbuttoned, even in the courtroom, which is, this is a huge step of of non-compliance. So those things are very measured and very thought out. So every time he had a new costume, which is pretty much every day, we would go through those small decisions of the small decisions that collectively tell a subliminal story. I mean, the average viewer may not exactly understand what happened, but they understand that the trial is moving on and on and on, and you feel it somehow.
So this is you've actually done the costuming for both of the films that Aaron Sorkin has directed so far, this one and his directorial debut, Molly's Game. How does he approach looking at a film's costume schematics?
He hopes you will just guide him through it. At the same time, I don't mean that to sound like he doesn't have a strong opinion, but he responds more to images and rather than a discussion. And consequently, fitting photos are very, very important. And actually, rather than standing with him and showing him them, it's easier to send them to him so he can respond on his own. And he can have very specific comments, incredibly well-written specific comments that actually can help you get, he's more inclined to describe an emotion or what he hopes to achieve, or then to tell you that it needs to be a yellow dress. He wouldn't do that. But I mean, I have received some pretty when we spoke earlier, he would say that if he costumed the trial of Chicago 7, that everyone would be wearing khaki pants and a blue shirt from the Gap. That's how he would do it. So I can tell he's very happy to have that taken off of his plate. and he, it took me a while to learn how to do it, but now I know how to do it. I now know how to costume for Aaron Sorkin.
So we kind of touched on this beforehand, but because these costumes were based on something that happened, are based on real life people, and we have a lot of photographs of course, this was a very public trial. Did you find you were able to take any liberties with how you wanted certain characters to look?
Yes, there were plenty of liberties. You start with the research, and of course, and then you sort of take your departure. You can just throw it out the window if you want, but actors really like to know where we're starting from, and it's more important to capture the mood and the feeling of each of these characters. But I would say that a couple of things that happened with Abbie Hoffman character, Sacha Baron Cohen playing him. Sacha, because he's created so many characters in his career, was quite emphatic that we could link everything he wore to an actual photo of Abbie Hoffman, because he just wanted to be able to back it up. He didn't want people to think that this was a made-up person, because a lot of people don't know anything about this trial or anything about Abbie Hoffman. It's practically ancient history. And so, and because it was in sometimes, really extreme clothing, which was very intentional on his part because it was so attention getting, and that was the point. He just wanted to make sure that we could back it up. So really, for everything, I had some image that I could show him and prove to him kind of that this is what he wore on this date. And actually, there are no photographs inside the courtroom. Zero. They're all sketches from court, sketch artists, court sketch artists. And you would occasionally be able to find pictures as they leave a courtroom, and occasionally, exterior photos, and you could possibly date them. But it was a bit of a puzzle to assemble. And the one thing I was pretty sure of was that he wore that fringe jacket on the first day of the trial. And I'm sure that that was thought through. And the jacket has a lot of movement. It's hard to ignore. And who would ever wear that into a courtroom? So that I was pretty sure of. Then, there were certain things that, the judge's robe and the policeman's shirt, all that stuff, happened. I didn't make that up. When he's marching with the, when he's marching in Grant Park the night before the convention in the judo jacket, that's definitely, I can date that, and that's true. So that's one example of how you really, exactly can line something up and try to recreate it. Then Joseph Gordon-Levitt, playing Richard Schultz, I rented his suits from a costume house upstate, and they had just bought out an estate. And they happened to be the estate of Robert Abrams, who used to be New York State Attorney General. And all of the suits, many of them from Brooks Brothers, they had in the inside pocket, they had his name, Robert Abrams, and they had the date. And they were from August 1969. And with some tailoring, they actually fit Joseph Gordon-Levitt pretty well. And I thought, this is as on point as it can be. This is from August 1969. It's from the Attorney General of New York State. I mean, yeah, it was really cool. And I didn't tell Joseph about that until after the camera had rolled on it, just because I wasn't sure if he would like it or not like it. I just, it didn't, and once it was on him and we had, built a rapport, I said, I'm just going to tell you this. And he really, really enjoyed that. So, so that's just an example of, like, we weren't trying to replicate Richard Schultz, who, he wore a suit and shirt and tie, of course, but, he was a little physically different, but we just confirming this is what a lawyer would wear at that time.
So one other thing I wanted to ask you about is actually about something you did several years ago. You designed the costumes for the Oscar-winning documentary, or short film, not documentary, short film, Trevor.
Yes.
Which became the basis for the wonderful charity, the Trevor Project.
Yes.
When you were doing the work for that movie, did you have any inkling that it would become as notable as it ended up, and as important as it ended up being?
I didn't have an inkling, but James Lacine is who wrote it, and he performed it as a one-man piece in New York, and it was developed by Randy Stone, who has since passed away. But I knew Randy, and I knew he had a good eye. And when I met James, I thought, oh my goodness, he's so dynamic. And Randy was able to get a lot of interesting people together, including the director, Peggy Reisky. I did not know it would go to the Trevor Project. But when I saw it finished, and I, of course, did the costumes, and, of course, we did it for nothing. And we were all, staying at Randy's house and, getting up in the morning and going out and doing it. But when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a really good movie. And then they started submitting it. And I thought, oh my God, just with their sheer, will, they might get this, they might win an Oscar. And I couldn't believe it. Then when it won an Oscar, which it tied, I believe. I don't know. I did not expect that, and I have told Peggy Reisky, who developed it into the Trevor Project. I said, "You're like the accidental activist, aren't you?" I mean, I don't think she set out to do that, but that became that, and they do have very good benefits. Meaning, if their annual benefit is usually very good. So no, I didn't know that, but obviously, I'm very happy that it has, and uh, they seem to also. They're very good at changing with the times, the Trevor Project. I feel like they were relevant, but they keep like evolving, and they just keep becoming. I don't know if they get more relevant, or they actually just they make sure they don't disappear, and that's really not easy to do. So that film is, I don't know, is it 20 years old? It's pretty old. So
I
I,
think
I
it's 15 years old.
so it has sustained itself really well, and I don't know. I'm very pleased for James and Randy in his honor, actually. And yeah, yeah.
Well,
That's so interested. So interesting that you knew that. That's so cool. Uh,
well, well, Susan, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the
yeah.
best this award
Thank
season.
you.
And to all of our viewers, please like this video, smash that subscribe button to get our latest content. And don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions, see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks so much, Susan.
Thank you.